This video aims to enlighten you on the objective strengths of rare item modifiers, enhance your spot check evaluation skills, and empower you to hang on to valuable drops. We won't cover every aspect of valuation in this video. However, by the end, for rare items, you will know what is garbage, what is useful, and what is valuable, as well as how to price check effectively. In this video, we use advanced mod descriptions. To enable that, go to Options, go to UI, and scroll down until you see Advanced Mod Descriptions here. Check that on, and click Save. When you're ready to go price an item and see what the economy thinks of it, you have two options. Either you can go to the official trade site, right here, or my recommendation is to use Awakened APoETrade. For our purposes, the only thing you need to do is set a key here for open without auto hide. Once you do this, you're able to hover over an item, even an item that's linked to you, and press that key, and it'll bring up this screen. Ignore this. What you want to do is go here. You can see here we have, it's not really worth anything until we start saying, oh, it's Shaper as well. Oh, it's item level 84. So as you can see, it'll give you a list of the stats of the item that you selected, and you can click on each of these in order to manipulate what it is that it searches for. To begin, let's go over the basic factors of an item. Here we have Conjurer Boots. The base of the item is Conjurer Boot. If we hold Alt, we can see the item's item level, or eye level, which is 85. Now, rare items that drop in the world can only spawn with up to 6 modifiers. This consists of 3 prefixes and 3 suffixes. These are what's known as explicit modifiers. If we use an alchemy orb, we can see an example of that. If we hold Alt to break down the modifiers here, we can see that it has 3 prefixes and 2 suffixes. Even though there is an open slot for a modifier, we cannot have 4 prefixes on here. Remember, it's limited to 3 and 3. There are 2 important factors when considering the inherent value of an item. Here we have poedb.tw. You go there, it'll take you to this site. Pop up to item, and then the item list here. And for our example, we're going to stick with boots. So we'll click on item boots, and we'll scroll down here. Let's locate our Conjurer Boots here. Now, Conjurer Boots are tier 3. That's because Sorcerer Boots have the highest base energy shield and highest base level requirement. This is the tier 1 version of energy shield boots. When it comes to tier 1 armors, it's usually fairly straightforward, as the implicits, if they have any, are simply better. When it comes to weapons, it's not always so simple. An example is here. All of these bows are what I would consider tier 1. They are the highest base damage, highest base crit, highest base attack speed that you can find. However, 4 of them have different implicit modifiers. They have similar levels of base effective damage per second. So, which one is best is dependent on what your build is trying to achieve. For our purposes, what we really need to understand is that tier 1 armors, tier 1 weapons, tier 1 item bases have the best possible stats, and this inherently makes them more valuable. To conclude our introduction to items, let's talk about explicit modifiers. We're still using poedb.tw. We've gone to our mod entry here, and we've gone down to boots and intelligence. Just like item bases, explicit modifiers, and indeed almost all modifiers in the game, fall into tier categories. For example, if we click on life here, you can see all of our tiers here and the item level that is required for that to roll. If we continue on and look at one of our higher item level tiers, we have increased energy shield, requires item level 84. This is why you'll see tier 1 item bases that are item level 84 and above have a higher inherent value, as anything that's lower item level simply cannot roll the unassailable modifier. So how do we use all of this information to help us value items? Well, I like to think of it as primary modifiers. So right now we're looking at strength boots. Its primary modifiers are going to be maximum life, maximum move speed, and perhaps armor and plus max life. Notice how they both contribute to maximum life. On the suffix side, the resists are going to be the primary modifiers. Any boots that match most of these primary modifiers, or maybe all of them, are inherently going to have more value than any other kind. That's for armor. For melee weapons, you're typically looking at these guys here as one primary grouping, these guys here as a primary grouping, and damage with attack skills. That works with either grouping. On the suffix side, it's going to be increased attack speed and increased critical chance and critical multiplier. Now this is just a general rule, but it will help you in evaluating melee weapons. Now bows are going to follow the same rules with some additions. On the prefix side, their primary modifiers can include level to socketed gems and level to socketed bow gems. This is for builds like Caustic Arrow, for instance. On the suffix side for bows, I would include additional arrows as part of the primary damage grouping, as well as potentially damage over time multiplier. When it comes to wands, they have quite a few prefixes and some additional suffixes. They haven't really changed in terms of the primary groupings for physical damage and flat elemental damage. They also have now plus additional levels of specific gems, and they have specific elemental modifiers. The idea here is to group like things together. So something with percent increased lightning damage, if it has additional gem levels for lightning spells, then that synergizes well, that increases its damage. That would include itself as a primary modifier in the context of a wand that has other lightning damage modifiers. Simply put, weapons should have damage modifiers. Anything with leech, resistance, stun duration, these types of modifiers are not primary. Rings and amulets follow a similar style to wands. It should be synergistic. So, if you have amulets or rings that have flat elemental damage, then you're also looking for percent elemental damage with attack skills. Or, for example, flat damage to attacks, say flat fire damage, percent increased fire damage also works together with it. You're looking for these fundamental types of synergy within items. To summarize, an item's base, in this example Tier 3 Conjurer Boots, determines the base stats that it has, in this case Energy Shield, which also determines its potential Energy Shield, as an item with a higher base has higher potential. Couple that with the item's item level, in this case 85, which determines what level of explicit modifier tiers it can roll. In this example, any modifier that required item level 86 and above cannot roll on this item. Before we move on to the next section, I'm going to put up a guide for a few moments that you can reference back to help you evaluate items depending on when you are in a league. Now, let's take a look at some items and see whether they're useful, valuable, or garbage. This bow is what I would call a workhorse. So, it's not flashy, but it gets the job done. As you can see here, it has Tier 2 Tyrannical mod for increased physical damage. That's really quite good. It has attack speed, and it has flat cold. The projectile speed is not useless, but it is wasted. The nice thing about this bow is that we have 2 prefixes and 2 suffixes, which means we can add flat physical damage. It has 195 physical DPS. Okay. Let's go over to crafting bench here, and let's add our flat physical. Our flat physical, just a random roll there. Now we're looking at 336 physical DPS. That's not bad. The bow doesn't have a lot of modifiers on it, but the modifiers that it does have are useful to it. And the increased physical damage roll is Tier 2, which is very powerful. And this isn't even 20% qualityed. Now you might be thinking the 45 to 74 cold damage doesn't really help it that much. It really can. If you convert physical to cold, which is not uncommon, say with Ice Shot or basically any elemental conversion build, which is very popular and very powerful, you have a very strong bow here. In the mid-league here, we have a couple here at 3 and 4 Chaos. These might be already sold, so perhaps even 10 Chaos. You could definitely sell this for between 5 and 10 Chaos, even at mid-league. Early on, this bow is absolutely valuable and very usable. Here we have a two-handed weapon that really doesn't know what it wants to be. It has a lot of modifiers that seem perhaps on the surface that they could be useful. It has high flat fire damage at tier 2. It has minimal increased physical damage. It has attack speed, which is useful. It has a double modifier for accuracy rating. As you can see, it has the hybrid mod for physical damage and accuracy, and then it has its own accuracy rating, which is kind of a wasted mod, if not a useless mod. And it also has bleeding, inflicts damage 24% faster. It's really not useful. It doesn't really know what it wants to be. Either it wants to deal bleeding damage, in which case it needs some more specific mods as well as much higher physical damage and no elemental damage at all, or it needs more physical damage, period, if it wants to be a fire damage two-hander. Two-handers need to have very high DPS. This one does not. And the implicit of stun duration and the extremely low attack speed and low crit chance means this is garbage. This is not useful at any point in the league. It doesn't know what it wants to be. Throw it away. This wand is the embodiment of not knowing what it wants to do. First and foremost, resistances on a weapon are typically useless. You almost never want to have resistances on your weapon. It has flat physical damage. It has flat cold damage. Those do work together, but the mods are low tier. We have tier 7 physical damage, and we have tier 3 cold damage. Not very much worth it. We have physical attack damage leached as mana. A useless mod, for sure. We want damage modifiers. And it's an implicit with increased spell damage. This wand is complete garbage. For this ring, the only thing that really gives it value is the fact that it's Shaper mod. And the reason that is because it has tier 2 spell damage. Spell damage can't roll on rings unless it is a Shaper modded ring. So, we have power there that can't otherwise be gotten. We have tier 1 life roll. And we have a fair amount of resistances. Looks like around just under 80. Not incredible, but not bad. We have an open prefix slot, so we have the option for mana. In this case, they opted with damage, which is fine. And it has mana regeneration. Also can be useful. May not be. A lot of builds do use Eldritch Battery, so that they can use Energy Shield instead of mana, so they can reserve more. And we also, unfortunately, have a useless mod on this ring, which is increased rarity. It is always useless. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. But to the question of, is this useful, valuable, or garbage? Well, it's certainly not garbage. Tier 1 life, tier 2 spell damage, by themselves, they're useful. A decent amount of resistances, and an open prefix slot. So, is it valuable? I would say yes. Mid-league, even late league, this is a valuable item. Let's see if the rest of the economy agrees with me. So, if we have, let's see if that matters here. If you're looking for one specific resistance to be really high, then yes, we do have value here even at mid-league. If we take away the one specific resist, then the price will drop a little bit, but it certainly has value. There's no question. Now this ring is a fun one. It might be a little deceptive. The stats are obviously good. Tier 1 life, Tier 1 fire resistance, Tier 4 cold resistance, and it does have an Elrond crafted modifier, but let's ignore that for a moment. The important distinction here is that this is a Shaper ring. Let's take a look. If this just has 70 plus life, 100 resist or more, it's a few chaos. Nothing to write home about. However, this is a Shaper ring. That is important. If you look at Shaper rings with those mods, you now have 120 chaos. This is important because Shaper modifier matters to things like Eternity Shroud, which my character is wearing, for instance. So, Shaper, Elder, and the Conqueror modifiers do matter. This item is always useful, and I would say no matter where you are in the league, this is a valuable item. So the cast speed, tier 7, and the critical strike chance, tier 4, if those were simply higher tiers, that's the only way the item gets better. It knows exactly what it wants to be, and that's why it has extremely high value, and it is extremely useful. Understanding how item base types and item levels and item modifiers all work together to form potentially powerful items also helps you understand why NeverSync's filter works the way that it does. As you become more efficient with your character, and presumably faster in clearing, you only want to see the items that have the highest potential to actually be good and valuable. We haven't gone over everything that there is to know in Path of Exile about evaluating the value and usefulness of rare items. It is an enormous task. We have not touched on Shaper or Elder, not really. We haven't looked at Delve, Conqueror modifiers, Veiled modifiers, and I'm sure there are others that I'm not thinking of right now. But until you start getting into the specialty rares that are hyper-focused on specific builds, the knowledge that you've learned here will help you in 92.8% of the drops that you'll see. And with Awaken APoETrade, you can also spot check evaluate against the economy and see if you're right in essentially real time. I hope you walk away from this video with a stronger sense of what rare items are garbage, useful, and valuable, all in the context of where you are in the league. If you found this useful, let me know by hitting like and subscribe, and hitting me up on Twitch or some of my other socials, all linked below. Till next time, stay sane, Exile.